to What Is It Wednesday from the Barnes Museum. You'll notice I'm outside today. I don't have a mask on right now. I am in a cemetery in Southington, and right now there is absolutely no one around me. I do have my mask with me, however, though, so if someone does come around, I'll be able to put it on and practice safe social distancing, as I hope you all are as well, staying safe and healthy when you're out in public. Welcome to Oak Hill Cemetery in Southington, Connecticut. This is a fabulous cemetery that has its roots deeply implanted in the history of our town. Let me flip you around here so you can see one of the oldest parts of the cemetery. I'm up at the top of the hill, and this beautiful part of the cemetery does have some of the oldest stones in it. The cemetery dates back to before we even became established as a town. Southington is Southington, for those of you who don't know, because we are south of Farmington. We used to be part of Farmington, and we were the southern section of it, and we were a farming community way back then. And in around the 1720s, we asked for something called winter privileges. We asked that we could go to services here closer to town instead of risking our lives on horse and carriages going all the way up to Farmington for Sunday services. It was a wonderful experiment. In fact, Southington's first meeting house was on this property. And if we scan over here, you'll see that, where's my finger? This tree right here. There is a rock in front of that tree that has a plaque. I'll post a picture of it in the comments section later. And that was the place of our very first meeting house here in Southington. That meeting house was used from 1726 to 1759. We didn't become established as a town until 1779. So again, this cemetery really deeply implanted in the early history of the museum. Now, I'll flip you back around. I love cemeteries. Cemeteries are easily one of my favorite places to explore anywhere I go throughout the country. The reason why is because there's so much you can learn about a community and a culture based on their cemeteries. You can learn about cultural belief systems of the time. You can learn about different cultural trends, economic diversity, technological advances and changes. You see a lot of the old stones that I just shown you are, they don't have a lot of elaborate designs. The ones that do have designs are hand carved. And if we were to go up to the newer part of the cemetery, you see all the beautiful stones that are lasered with beautiful pictures and sometimes even portraits of the family members now. So you can really see how time changes in cemeteries. And I do love spending a lot of time in them. But today I want to show you the family plot of the Bradley Barnes family, the ones that lived at the Barnes Museum for 137 years. So I'm going to flip you around again and show you their family plot. It starts right here. This is the main stone, and the entire family is right here in this plot. I'm going to show you a picture of them. Kind of come over here and put this down so you can see their photo one more time. This is the Bradley family. And for those of you who missed our very first What Is It Wednesday, I kind of introduced this family to you. We're going to go a little bit more in depth today. So we have the patriarch of the family right here. This is Eamon Bradley. And Eamon Bradley grew up where Bradley Mountain Farm is right now, where they have the wonderful goats and the soap and the goat yoga and everything. Great community asset we have there. So we have Eamon Bradley. Eamon married Sylvia Barnes in 1836, and they had 3 children. Their oldest son is Franklin, standing right here, the top hat. He married his wife Julia, and they had 1 son, Eddie. Then Eamon and Sylvia's youngest of three children is standing right here above her mother. This is Emma. Emma was also married twice but had no children. And then Eamon and Sylvia's middle daughter is Alice, standing right here. Alice married Norman Barnes, hence the Barnes Museum. These guys were both Barneses, actually. They were distantly related. But Norman Barnes and Alice were married in 1873, and 10 years later, they had Bradley Barnes. They named after both the families. Whoops, the wind's getting it right here. They had Bradley Barnes. Now, Bradley inherited the house from his grandfather after he passed away in 1836, and he lived in the house until 1973. So we were just talking about the technology of the stones and whatnot that we have. This is quite a monument. This is a testament to, of course, how much money the family had, but also the technology of the 1900s. This is post 1900, of course. This is, even though the family passed away, some of them in the 1800s, this is much more reminiscent of the later years of the family. So let's go in and take a peek. You might notice that there are flowers on either side of the monument. There is money that was left to the cemetery to keep the graves up to date and not in disrepair, and flowers are put on them during several parts of the year. So we have our Easter flowers out right there. We thank Oak Hill Cemetery for doing that. Let's go over and see the matriarch and patriarch. This is where Sylvia Bradley is buried, right next to her husband Eamon, right here. And then right behind them, we have Alice Bradley Barnes, ABB, and then right next to her husband, Norman A. Barnes. Over here in the back is where we have BHB, Bradley Henry Barnes, is next to his wife, Leela Upson Barnes. We spoke about Leela in one of our previous What Is It Wednesdays, talked about her family and her beautiful artwork at the museum. If you didn't see that What Is It Wednesday, go back and take a little peek. And we'll come over here to this side where we have Edward Yeomans and Emma Bradley Yeomans. Emma is that youngest daughter of the Bradley family, the one that was married twice but didn't have any children. She was holding the parasol behind her mother. And Emma, for those of you who are familiar with downtown Southington, Emma lived in what is now the Elks Lodge. And that beautiful white building with a rounded porch over near Webster Bank, that used to be her house. And Emma is responsible for several monuments that we have here in town. She is, if those of you who know the Fritter booth really well during the Apple Harvest Festival, we hope we have this year, that wonderful fountain is in memory of Edward Yeomans, her husband, a friend of animals. And she was married, as I had mentioned, twice. Her second husband is not buried here. He is buried with the Newell family. And she named that house, that is now the Elks Lodge, the Yowell House. She combined both of the names, Yeomans and Newell. She made it cool before Brangelina did it. And she combined that name and called that the Yowell House. We have a beautiful guest book with all the people who visited their house, who came and signed in. Emma's also responsible for the beautiful chapel that we have here at Oak Hill Cemetery. I'll also post a photograph of that, and it has the family names on the front of the beautiful chapel as you drive up into Oak Hill Cemetery. Over here, we have on the far left, we have Franklin Bradley, and we have Julia Arnold Bradley. Now, Julia is the reason why we have a hospital here in town. And while we're talking about hospitals, we just want to thank all those who are on the front lines, our first responders. They are doing a wonderful job, and we really appreciate it. Everybody who is out there working through these difficult times, we really appreciate everything you're doing to keep our town and our communities up and running. So thank you. But Julia is the reason why we have that hospital here standing. And even though the Hospital of Central Connecticut has taken it over, those funds are still in play, which is why it is at Bradley campus. And we again thank them for being open and helping people out during these times. And then right below me, we have two people we don't talk about a lot. This is Eamon Edward Barnes and his wife, Caroline. Now, I'm going to come over here and show you a close-up of the stone. I had somebody say they're very simple stone markers. The ones on the ground they're very simple, and then we get a little more ornate as we come over to the main family stone over here. So great question. This is Eamon Edward Bradley. You can see he was born in 1870 and died at the very young age. He was died only in 1916. He had two wives. Carolyn was one of his two wives, and tragically, both of his wives passed before he did. One of them died of cancer, and one of them died in childbirth along with a baby. And we say at the house when we give tours that he died of a broken heart. Eamon didn't do well with the loss of either of his wives, and unfortunately passed away due to complications of consumption, and didn't have any heirs. We had another question come in earlier in the week from a woman asking, were there additional family members? Are there additional family members? We always talk about these core members of the family. These are the ones who were either living in the house or directly related. This is Bradley Barnes was the end of the direct line of this family right here. Now, if we go over, there are other Bradleys and other Barneses that you'll see throughout not only this cemetery, but several other cemeteries that we have in town. And some of them are connected. Some of them are distant relatives. They are second cousins, aunts and uncles. Again, when we were talking about Leela Upson, Leela, her middle name was Holcomb. She is the great niece of Connecticut's Governor Holcomb. So there are distant family members, but this is the last line of the family that we had here. So mentioned a little bit about the monuments and the hospitals and the legacy that this family left. Bradley himself, as we kind of scan the rest of the cemetery here, you can go on our little virtual cemetery walk. Bradley himself had a few different reputations in town. And one of them was the fact that people thought he was a stingy old man, that he was a penny pincher, that he was mean, that if people went up to his door and knocked on the door and said, hey, you know, we're raising money for a fundraiser right now, would you give us some money? There was a chance that Bradley would say no. And so people would walk away and be like, you know, he's the richest man in town and he won't give any of his money away. But the fact of the matter is that Bradley was very quietly contributing to the community. He knew exactly what he wanted to do with all of his funds at any given time. He knew that he wanted to will the house and its contents to the town of Southington. He left, of his $10.5 million fortune, he left the vast majority of it to churches, schools, organizations, foundations. The Main Street Foundation has a Bradley and Leela Upson foundation. They give many, many, many thousands of dollars back into the Southington community for health and well-being. So these funds are still in play throughout the town, working for the town. One of our favorite stories of Bradley, which truly tells us the man that he really was, contrary to what some of those rumors might have been, he had a groundskeeper. And that groundskeeper, Bradley would come up to him every once in a while. He'd hear of a family member in need, and he would hand his groundskeeper an envelope with a name on it. And he would kind of make a little shh symbol, like very quietly. And this gentleman that worked for Bradley would read the name on the envelope. He would go to that person's house and quietly leave the envelope full of money if the family was in need. We'd even heard a story of how Bradley Barnes purchased someone's wedding dress at one given time. So this family, yes, of course, was a very prominent family in the town of Southington, but I've often been thinking these last few weeks, what would they be doing during a time of pandemic like this? I think they'd be doing exactly what all of us are trying to do in our community and doing a great job doing it. They left their mark and their legacy in their way, just like all of us are doing it. Look at what our communities are doing. We have these phenomenal ways of keeping people's spirits up. We see hearts and thank yous everywhere. We're going on bear hunts. People are making masks. They're donating to community services and Bread for Life. They are focusing on their neighbors in need, reaching out to those who might be living alone. This is exactly what I think the Bradley family would be doing. After reading 52 years of diary entries, I think I can safely say that this is what this family would be doing as well. So thank you for being a part of Southington's history today, the way that the Bradley Barnes family was a part of history. If you have any additional questions about Oak Hill Cemetery or the many different historic sites that we have in town, feel free to reach out and let us know. And stay safe and enjoy the lovely day outside. Have a great day.